Now we know the type, we know the strategy. Now we're going to move into the profile. And I have an individual video on every one of the profiles. So once again, I'm just going to do a quick review of it just so that if you haven't watched any of those videos, you can get the information. But if you want more information, check them out and I will leave the link below. So let's get started. Hi, this is Denise Matthew and welcome to another part of HT 101, How to Read Your Human Design Chart. I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to slow down the speed of my voice, it's an easy thing to do. Just do it on the playback speed as I'm showing here, and it will be an experience tailor-made for you. So the profile is going to give us another layer of our human design chart. This is going to talk even more about the specifics of who we are. So we start with our type and our strategy, and now we're going into just one of the 12 profiles. So the 12 profiles are broken into 3 different types: the left angle profile, the right angle profile, and also the juxtaposition. Now the juxtaposition is special in itself in that there's only one juxtaposition, and that's the 4-1. The juxtaposition is the way the mandala and way the earth and sun go around, it doesn't happen as often as the other ones do, so it's a less common type of profile. Based on human design, the juxtaposition is considered to have a more fixed destiny. So if you look at the left angle profile, we have people who are here for other people, and how they learn, it's all about relationships. Once again, based on theory, there is considered to be some level of karma that anybody with a left angle profile is always giving to people. That could be small or big based on the interactions, but that's what their human design says, and it is considered to be more fated, as in their destiny is a little bit more fixed. Now when you have a right angle profile, you have a little bit more of an ability to have some flexibility. Now again, everybody has their beliefs on destiny, fate, and that kind of thing. I'm just telling you how it is in human design and the theory in human design. If that doesn't seem like that's something that you're aligned with, that's absolutely fine. Regardless of what you believe or don't believe, the profiles do have a lot of information about how you operate in the world, and they still have quite a bit of value in any human design reading. But as I said, the right angle is all about learning about the self and not as much about the relationships. It doesn't mean you don't get in relationships, but you do learn a lot about yourself. And when you think about yourself in a relationship, you look at how do you interact and how does it change you, as opposed to a left angle is really about the relationship and what they can learn about the relationship that they're in. So that's just something that shows the different categories of the specific profiles. Now let's get into the actual profiles and just do a really quick brief summary of each one. Now the profile numbers come from the personality lines and also the design lines. Now if you see, I have it circled here. So it says that it's 54-1 and 53-1, and on the other side it's 57-3. So what that says, it's a 1-3 profile. The 1 part of the profile is something that we're more aware of, the more conscious part of our design, and then the other part is the design part. And I know the words are a little bit weird in that it's hard to describe them without using the words like personality and design, but I'm just trying to show you where the actual numbers come from. So the design side is the more unconscious numbers, and this part of our profile generally we become more aware of, or even our body graph we become more aware of when we get older or after the age of 40, but other people can see this in us. And Ra Uru would call this binary consciousness, because we have the personality side, which is a part of us that we're very aware of, that we feel that's who we are, but then we may not necessarily know much about the design part of us, or the unconscious part of us, the part of us that other people know about us. And so that's why he would talk about what you believe you are and what you really are. So that's the difference. And so that's where the personality and design come together and give us a profile. So again, the first number will be something that we're more aware of, and the second number will be something that we're less aware of until after sort of the age of 40. The first profile that we have is the 1-3, and that's the investigating experimenter. Now, human design lingo, you would see the investigator, martyr. I don't really care for the word martyr, so I just figure that we can just change it to experimenter, because ultimately that's what you do in this profile. The energy is, the first line is someone who likes to get into information, trying to, collect as much information as you can. And then once you've collected the information, then you go out and experiment with this. So there is a lot of investigating and experimenting in this energy. And that's something that's a theme of your life, where you're always trying to figure things out. This is a right angle profile, so it's more a self-involved. So the experimenting and investigating is really about you and figuring out how you factor into the big world, and how are you growing, and how do these experiments affect you in your life. This information can also be used to help other people, so that the experiments that worked for you or didn't work for you, you can give that valuable information to other people, and they can sort of learn by your trials and the things that you've learned, and the things that have worked and the things haven't worked, and it's valuable information that other people can benefit from. So some people who have experimental energy may feel that they have made a lot of mistakes in your life, but ultimately every so-called mistake is really just a learning opportunity, so that you can bring that information and show the world, or whoever you want to, or even show just yourself, that what works and what doesn't work. And the thing about this energy is, because there is a tremendous amount of investigation that's done before the experimenting, there can be more time between the investigating and the experimenting. And so there's more information that you're working with before you're actually going out and experimenting with it. And in the long run, this can be more beneficial to you. So we're talking about the 1-4 profile. We're talking about, again, the investigation. And then we also have the fourth line, which is about the opportunist. Now, when we talk about an opportunist, we're talking about people who have a lot of friends, or a lot of groups that they connect with, and they get their opportunities through these groups. Somebody with a fourth line profile is going to be somebody who has this want or need to have some level of stability, because if you can imagine, for a fourth line or four corners of a house, it's more of a structured existence. This is somebody, when you have a fourth line, it really does talk about somebody who doesn't want to be pushed into anything, who really wants to be taken for who they are, and also just accept it for exactly what they have to give. And you take your time, and you're very deliberate with the changes you make in your life. And changes can sometimes be difficult, because you do build this foundation, and leaving that foundation can be kind of scary, or it can be difficult. But the thing about the fourth line energy is that usually you'll build a new opportunity before you finish off with with something else that you're doing. So usually you're always building a new opportunity, so that you can move to that. And that can happen with relationships, with friendships, with jobs, and all the opportunities in your life. And this too is a right angle profile. So in other words, this is a personal experience on how the world affects you and how you feel in the world. When we're talking about a 2-4 profile, we're talking about a profile that is actually very good in their idea that the second line is all about being called out, or sort of being asked to show your talents to the world, whatever they are. And the fourth line is all about opportunities. And as we talked about, it's all about building a foundation. It's all about having a lot of connections, a lot of friend groups, and a lot of organizations that you're a part of. You know a lot of people. So when you think about it, you have this stable foundation of people and opportunities that come from the people who you know, but you're also being called out about these opportunities. The second line is the hermit energy, the energy that likes to be alone to process what's going on in their life. And given on their own defenses, sometimes somebody really likes to be a hermit, and they like to sort of go off and just be alone, and even the fourth line can be like this sometimes too. But because of the second line energy, you're always going to be sort of not forgotten. There are certain profiles that if you sort of fall off and you're not talking to anybody, and nobody has seen you for a while, nobody may actually be looking for you, because it's not the nature of your energy. But with the second line energy, people are actually looking for you. If you drop off and you're not doing something, or you don't show up to parties that you always went to, people are going to go, well, where are you? Why are you not here? So that's the kind of energy. And so the hermit is away. They're working on their own things. They're doing what they want to do. Then the fourth line is making the opportunities, building the foundation. Again, this is the same concept of take me as I am, love me as I am, and don't try and change me. And there's deliberate changes and slow changes that come because of this foundation. And because the second line is really more of a hermit energy, you can have the fourth line, which is someone who doesn't want to go out either. But there's this energy of once you get out, you feel really happy because you need that connection. Anybody with a fourth line energy needs some level of connection with people. They need that friend group or to be part of a group. The hermit doesn't need that as much. So you have this sort of push-pull. The hermit says, no, I want to stay in the house. And the fourth line says, no, I want to go out and meet friends. So the fourth line can get out after it's been called out. Get out, enjoy your time with your friends, and then go back home, decompress, and have your hermit time. So it's actually a really nice profile. Although there is push and pull because of the being called out energy of it, it actually does work really well together. And it really does put you in the right places at the right time, being called out for your talents. And this is a right angle profile as well. So again, an individual experience. And now we get into the 2-5 profile. Again, hermit, heretic. I've written it here, but also teacher, because I prefer teacher to heretic. Heretics just doesn't sound very nice. So if you have a 2-5 profile, we're building back on the same idea of having this natural talent. We're also building on the idea that you're being called out for this natural talent. Now, when you have a fifth line energy, this is where we get into a projection field. Now, we're talking about a projection field. We are talking about a perceived vision of who you are. So in other words, you can potentially be a chameleon of sorts, where you are being a different person based on all the different people that you're hanging out with. So in this friend group, you're this person. In that friend group, you're that person. And so there can be this chameleon quality to somebody with a fifth line profile. This is less conscious because it's a second line in this profile, so you may not see it. The other thing about the projected energy is that people see you wherever you go. You're very noticed. Anybody who has a fifth line energy is going to be noticed wherever they go. They can't just kind of slip into a room and not be noticed. Everybody will turn their heads when they walk into the room. Again, the energy. The fifth line energy is a teacher energy. And what that is all talking about is as a fifth line energy, you are breaking down the concepts that other people may not understand. And in doing so, you're showing people, you're universalizing the information so more people can get a grasp of the information that you know. So you're teaching people these concepts, breaking them down and saying, okay, this is how it all looks. So the thing about the fifth line energy is, if we go back to the whole projection field, we're talking about an energy that is an expectation of what you can bring to the table. Authenticity in all you say and do, being the true you at all times as much as possible, even if you want to maybe change who you are so that you can feel accepted, will always work to your benefit. Because when you bring your authentic self to the table, you are saying, this is who I am, and this is what you can expect from me. The problem with the problems that arise with the fifth line energy is when you try to sort of become someone you're not so that you can be accepted. And when this happens, then people have these expectations that don't line up with what you actually can give to them. And if you are getting in a projection field, or you're having people expect things that you actually are not able to deliver, and you never could deliver, but for some reason people believe that's the case because you were trying to be accepted and appreciated, then what can happen is that you can hide away. So we have a second line, which is all about the hermit energy, which really likes to be away from people. And when somebody with a fifth line energy is getting in the wrong projection field, or people are expecting things that you can't deliver, and you sort of get villainized for not bringing what you promised or what they perceive you as promising to the table, then you can hide away. But because of the second line energy, eventually you will be called back out to share your talent with the world, because the fifth line is all about sharing. But the key of every fifth line energy is to always to be true as you can be to who you are at the core of your being. And when you are, then people will see you and know exactly what you have to give to the world. Now we're going on to the 3-5 profile. Now 3-5 profile: martyr, experimenter, heretic, teacher. Two heavy duty words. And so when we're talking about a third line, we're talking about somebody who's experimenting with life, somebody who's trying this and trying that. How does this work? How doesn't it work? What works for if I do this, what will I get? If I do that, what will I get? There's this level of always experimenting with life, and life is everything. Life is relationships. Life is jobs. Life is where you live, what you eat. It's an experiment of pretty much everything. And then you have a fifth line energy, and this is all about the projection field. This is all about where you are. People are expecting you to be a specific representation based on what they believe that you can give them. Now, you have to remember, because you're experimenting, a lot of times people will expect you to deliver the goods or to share what you know before your experiments are even completed. And because of this, there could be some miscommunications where you're still actually in the middle of your experiment. You're still figuring things out, and someone's saying, well, show me how. And then you get in trouble because you don't have all the information that you need. So the thing about the third line energy is it's all about knowing that these experiments are extremely valuable. And if you can't sort of go out and start sharing right away, it's okay. Continue to do your experiments, to do those kind of things, because the kind of information that you're learning is extremely valuable for the rest of the world. We can learn from somebody with a 3-5 profile or a third line profile of any kind, how things work. And it prevents us from having to get into dicey situations, because someone in the third line has said, oh yeah, I did that and this is what works, so I'm going to say don't do that. And so they can tell us. So there is so much value there. And as long as somebody with a 3-5 profile is getting in the correct projection field, or they're getting in a projection field, which is, and when we're talking about projection field, we're talking about where you're being expected to actually deliver a certain item. And the item is something that's sort of you're kind of giving off, and it has to really line up with what you can give. And when it lines up with what you can give, so if you're promising to sell something, not that this is a sales energy, but if you're promising to deliver a package and the package that you deliver is nothing like people are expecting, then that's when you're in the wrong projection field. But when you're being your authentic self and you're saying, this is what I have, this is what I've learned, what you can give is very valuable. The thing about somebody with a 3-5 profile as well is that there could be this idea that there's always something better on the other side of the experiment. So this can be the energy of jumping in and jumping out of relationships. It could be the energy of experimenting with relationships, experimenting with jobs. So there could be a lot of changes in jobs. There could be a lot of changes in relationships. There could be a lot of changes in friend groups. And if you keep in mind that this is part of the process, this is part of the energy, this is part of you, there's nothing wrong with this energy, this is exactly what you're meant to do, then it gets a little easier. Because a lot of people with the 3-5 energy have felt that they've bumped up a lot of times against walls, and things have been tough. This energy does get a little bit more stable, or the experimenting kind of comes down a little bit more after the age of 40. So usually there's a more settling in of the energy. But ultimately, the experiments that you do are extremely important to the rest of the world. And if you can have confidence that whatever you're doing is not a mistake, and that the only way to learn is to try things out, and to understand that that's part of your design, that's part of your energy, then hopefully it will make it a little bit easier for you in your life trajectory. And the fifth line energy will always be noticed, so it's not like you can slip into a room and not be noticed. And this is also a right angle profile, so a more personal expression of the life. Now we're talking about the 3-6 profile. We're talking about for the first 30 years of someone's life, it means you're experimenting doubly, because anybody who carries a sixth line, the sixth line energy is all about 3-phase life. The first phase is from birth until about 28, 29, and that's usually around the Saturn return. The second phase is about 28 to 29 to about 50, 51, and that's when you have your what they call the on the roof stage. And then you have, after 51, you have your Chiron return, and this is where you sort of step into your role model status. So when the first 30 years of your life, when we look at the sixth line, we're looking at it as a third line. So ultimately this would be like a 3-3 profile. Third line is all about experimenting. The third line is all about looking at all the different ways that things can happen. Experimenting with life, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. This can be in relationships, jobs, this can be pretty much in everything in your life. And if you imagine that you're doing double experimenting with life, with everything, because for the first 30 years of your life, before you actually have this so-called roof stage where you sort of step back from all the things you learned, all the things you experimented with, and sort of integrate what you learned, so that as the time passes, you can figure it all out and then become the role model, or by being yourself, you show how others, how they can be themselves as well. The sixth line energy is really about just walking the walk at the end of the Chiron return. After the Chiron return, it's just walking the walk of who you are. You're not trying to teach anybody anything. You're just being the fullest expression of who you are. And because of that, other people are looking at you and saying, oh, they're being themselves, and because of that, I can be myself as well. It's like you're just become the embodiment of who you are, and it's not like you have to be anything but who you are. Again, there's an experimenting in life, and you're going to continue experimenting even after your Chiron return, because ultimately this is all about who you are, and your experiments are the things that will teach others what works and what doesn't work. That's the whole point of the third line energy. It's to help people and to share the information that this is what works and this is what doesn't work. And so when you're a 3-6, you're a role model for experimenting, and that experimenting can change as you get older and as you mature, but it will always be a part of who you are no matter what. And somebody with a 3-6 profile is somebody who is going to have an abundance of information on what works and what doesn't work, and really someone who's a really valuable resource for the world in general. And the 3-6 profile is a personal profile or a right angle profile as well. So it's a personal experience. So life is a personal experience. And the juxtaposition, the 4-1, we have the fourth line. Now, the thing about the 4-1 energy is somebody who is building a foundation or building opportunities or building a friend group or some level of stability. But then after they build the stability, then they investigate it. So what happens is there could be potential for building things that once you've built it, or once you have this foundation, or this type of structure, now you're saying, well, now that I've sort of looked into it, I don't really like it. So there could be this whole situation where you're actually doing something and then you figure out, and that's how you learn, and that's exactly the right way for you. And just like all fourth line energy, it is really about understanding that this is a fixed type of energy. And with the 4-1, because it is a juxtaposition, there is a theory in human design that this is a more fixed sort of destiny, or a fixed way of living your life through, and you have more of a definitive way that life will show up for you. when you have a fourth line energy, any fourth line, you're always going to be slow to change direction, or there's a potential for you to want to take your time before you start to make changes, or before you go and start a new job, or to leave the stability that you've built. Although the investigation, if it turns out to be something that you're not specifically happy with, there could be this idea that you're more likely to want to be shifting out of that thing that you've built. But there's always going to be this level of taking your time to switch or to change direction, as well as the concept that you are who you are, and you'd rather not be pushed by anybody trying to change who you are. And if somebody really loves you, they will accept you for the full embodiment of who you are. And if people don't like it, then that's their problem, and they're probably not somebody that you don't want in your life anyway. Because there's a lot of foundation building, and foundation building takes a lot of time to do. Again, there's a slow moving energy. This is somebody who is deliberate and determined and takes their time potentially for any decisions that they make. And of course, we have to remember that the profile is just one part of the whole body graph. If we have somebody who's got a lot of emotional definition, and they want to jump in and do things much quicker, or they go by their emotions and their decisions, then you might see a little difference in the way the fourth line energy works. But ultimately, this is all about a destined or a fixed destiny, and somebody who needs to build the foundation, build the opportunities, and the opportunities they get usually come from their friend group or the foundation that they've built. And there is a fair bit of investigation, but that usually comes after the actual foundation is built. And as I said, this is a juxtaposition profile, so a very unique and individual and unusual profile that doesn't happen all the time. So basically, people who have this energy are very unique in how they act and interact in the world. So now when we go to the 4-6 profile, we're having somebody who's the opportunist role model. So we have somebody who's all about connections, all about take me as I am, love me as I am. It's all about knowing a lot of people and having a lot of groups that you interact with. Many of your opportunities can come from the groups that you interact with. The 6 line profile is all about 3 stages of life. So we have 0 to 28, 29, and that's when you have what's considered your experimental phase in life, where you decide, you figure out what works and what doesn't work in your life, and how you interact with it all, and you're learning as much as you can in those first 30 or so years, or 28 to 29 years, up until your Saturn return. And then when you hit your Saturn return, you go to the next phase of your life, and that's all about being on the roof, and that's where you integrate all the things you've learned. Now, because you have a 4th line energy as well, we're talking about somebody who has this energy to have a lot of friends, to be social. And yes, there is that pulling away. When you've had enough friends for a while, you need to sort of decompress and get your time alone as well. That's part of the 4th line energy. But you also have to remember, when you're in the 6th line, when you're in the roof stage, there is a lot of pulling back and sort of really thinking about what you did in those first 30 or so years, and how it affected you, and what can you use from it, especially when there's so much experimenting that you might have done in those years. And then the 4th line is saying, let's go out and meet people and get our opportunities. So you have a lot of push pull. So somebody who's a 4-6 profile who's on the roof could have a little bit of this push pull, where they want to do something and they're feeling lonely and they want to interact with people, but then the 6th line part of it saying, no, we don't want to interact, we want to be up here on the roof, we want to observe the world, we want to integrate what we've learned. So it can be difficult sometimes for somebody with a 4-6 profile to be on the roof and to be away from the fray of life. But the whole point of this energy is to really understand the connections of people, life. That's the role model. You're finding, you're discovering the bonds and connections of the world, and this is the role model energy, where you're coming out and you're being the embodiment of who you are. And sort of who you are is based on the bonds and connections that you have made and what you've learned from that. And so when you become the role model after your Chiron return at 50 years old or thereabouts, then you're getting to the point where you're starting to interact in a way where you're feeling that you're just being you, and the way you interact is incorporating all the things you've learned and all the connections that you've made in your whole life, and using that in a way that you're just being exactly who you are. You're being a role model for how connections are formed, for how bonds are made, for how opportunities come into the world. And this is the kind of energy that you bring into the world when you get off the roof or when you go through your Chiron return. And the thing about this energy is, again, this is a right angle profile, and it is sort of in between, going between the right angle and the left angle. So some people say that they feel it's more of a left angle profile because it's getting so close to the edge, but it is considered technically a right angle profile. And in that way, it's a personal experience in life. So when we have a 5-1 profile, we're moving into the left angle profile. So we're moving into an energy that people are learning what they need to learn from this lifetime through relationships. The fifth line energy is all about being in a projection field. And when we talk about a projection field, we are talking about this energy of an expectation. People are projecting what they think that somebody with a fifth line energy can bring to the table. Now, sometimes the people who are carrying this energy, this person with a fifth line energy, doesn't exactly have the same perspective as the people who are projecting what they believe that this person can give them. So in other words, the person with a fifth line energy doesn't necessarily have what they think, what other people think they can give. And because of this, there can be some miscommunications, and the fifth line energy can be somebody who's getting sort of villainized for not bringing to the table what they said or implied that they could give, and that is not necessarily the case. The fifth line energy may not have even said that they could bring something to the table, yet that's the projection field they're in. Being in the wrong projection field, or in a place where people are expecting you to be or say or do something that is not in integrity with you, is something that can happen when, instead of being your true authentic self, you're trying to fit in, or you're trying to be what other people want you to be, which is a really common thing for somebody with a fifth line energy, especially when it's the fifth line in the 5-1, because the fifth line is very conscious, and you know exactly how you are, sort of almost in a fishbowl where people expect you to be a certain way. But if there's anything to learn from somebody with a fifth line energy, it's all about the understanding that you have to be exactly who you are to be authentic, and there will be people who will like that part of you, or they will like what you have to give, and then there will be people who don't. And the people who don't like what you have to give are the people that are not in your projection field, or the people that are not the right people for you in your life. So ultimately, if you can be the truest embodiment of who you are, because there is this real ability to become a chameleon, to be whatever anybody wants you to be, and almost get lost in that whole drift of exactly where you stand and where you really are in who you are as an individual, because you're so lost in the fray of trying to be everything to everybody. And stepping back and saying, okay, this is who I am, and this is what I have to give. And then when you do that, people get on the same page as you, and what you have to give and what you have to offer is exactly what people are expecting you to offer. The fifth line energy is an energy that anywhere you go, you'll always be noticed. And if you see an image of somebody with a fifth line, usually that person is somebody who's striking, and it doesn't have to be about beauty or handsome or anything like that. It's just this striking sort of energy that they exude, and you can and your eyes are sort of drawn to them. The one part of the profile is all about investigation or data collection. So somebody who's a fifth line energy, 5-1, they're saying, okay, I can share something, I can teach something, but based on what I teach is what I will investigate. What will I figure out? What do people need? So anybody with a 5-1 energy is somebody who's great to actually be out there giving people what they need. And if you're coming with a level of integrity and authenticity, you will be getting people, you'll be giving people what they expect you to give and what you can 100% deliver. But when you get to the point where you're trying to deliver something that you actually can't deliver, that's when you get in trouble. And if somebody with a fifth line energy gets in trouble where they're having people expect or project certain expectations on them, that they can hide away and not really want to interact with people because you're always getting blamed for things that you haven't said or done. If we go back to the whole concept of being authentic, and even if you can be a chameleon, I mean, that certainly works. Like if you're doing acting or things like that, that's a really wonderful skill to have. But as long as you can, get in touch with who you are and who you want to be seen as, and just keep bringing that person forward, then things will turn out in a better way and people will get what they're expecting and you'll be happy and they'll be happy and everybody will get exactly what they want. And the thing about somebody who has a left angle profile is we're talking about somebody who's here to give karma to pretty much everybody who they meet. And the karma can be something as simple as just walking down a street and making eye contact with somebody, or something more extensive in that you have a relationship with somebody. But it is a more fixed or fated destiny based on human design theory. Now we go to the 5-2 profile. Now we're still going into the fifth line, and the fifth line is always going to be noticed wherever they go. The thing about the fifth line energy is it's all about authenticity and really providing the information or the product or whatever you are perceived to be able to give, to provide what you can give. And when you can give what people are projecting or what people actually think that they can get from you, then you're in the right projection field. But many times with the fifth line energy, people can be seeing something or seeing that you can give, or sort of projecting their ideas or concepts or what they think you can give onto you. And when they do that, then you get in this position where people are blaming you or saying, oh, well, you said you could give this and you didn't. So when this happens, somebody with the fifth line energy can go and hide away because they just get frustrated or tired and they just don't want to be villainized for something that they didn't feel like they've done anything wrong. When that happens, you also have the second line energy. The second line energy is all about hermiting away, being quiet and being alone and being happy to be alone, which can really work well with the fifth line energy when the fifth line energy has been sort of, made to be, to feel like you didn't provide what you wanted. You're feeling blamed for something you didn't do. And you just think, yeah, I'm just gonna get away from all of this. So because of that, the 5-2 energy can be almost one of the most invisible energies, or the person who is hidden away from the world. And they do come with a talent, as anybody who has a second line energy is, or the second line profile is coming with some level of talent. And the second line is all about being called out. So even though somebody with a 5-2 energy, which is a fairly rare profile, when they are away from the fray, they are going to be called out. They're not going to be forgotten because of the second line energy. The second line energy will go, oh, where's so-and-so? I don't see them anymore. And they'll be called out to show their talent. Somebody with a 5-2 profile has a tremendous amount of leadership energy. And because there's a lot of leadership energy with the fifth line, but then you also, you marry that with the second line, which comes with a level of talent. And you have somebody who's got a lot of talent and a lot of leadership. And they also are a teacher, and they're universalizing concepts, or they're bringing concepts and breaking them down so that more people can understand them. So this is somebody with a tremendous amount of talent, a tremendous amount of leadership. But the thing about it is to always be authentic in everything they say and do, so that people are on the same page, so that they get on the right projection field, so people expect what somebody with a fifth line energy is ready to give. And when this happens, then somebody with a 5-2 profile can shine in the way they want to shine. And then once they do, they'll want to go back and spend some time alone, because that hermit energy really needs to get their space and time alone as well. And that's sort of where they get away and they sort of get that energy boost that they need by being away from people. A 5-2 energy, to be their best self, needs to have a balance of alone time and a balance of time being out and being the leader and the teacher. And when they get that, then they're going to feel their best self. And the thing about this energy is it's a left angle profile. So in other words, this is a karmic energy, and it is all about giving karma to everyone you meet. And this could be just meeting somebody and, a little bit of eye contact and you move on, or something more in depth like a relationship. But karma is a big part of the left angle profile, and it is a destined, or there's a more fated trajectory of the life. So now that we get into the 6-2 profile, we're talking about somebody who is a conscious role model, somebody who feels potentially that they have something big to do in the world. And anybody with a 6-line energy would be considered somebody who's a late bloomer, because we have someone who's having 3 stages in their life. The first stage is 0 to 28 to 29, or 0 until their Saturn return. The second stage is what we consider someone who's going on the roof. And when somebody goes on the roof, they sort of get detached from the world around them, and they integrate all the experiments they did, because for the first years of their life, the first 29 to 30 years of their life, somebody is with a 6-line profile is going to be experimenting with what works and what doesn't work. And because of this, we have somebody who has had a few knocks in their life. As anybody who's an experimental energy will understand, that you're not always going to have experiments work exactly the way you want to, and you're going to have some knocks or some raps on your fingers as life goes on. When you're integrating, when you get on the roof, somebody with a 6-2 energy is usually pretty happy to be on the roof, because the 6th line is all about being in that middle stage where they're detached from society. And the 2nd line, which is a hermit energy, which loves to be away from everybody and loves to be away from the fray, is very happy to be up on the roof. So sometimes when their Chiron return comes at the age of 50 or 51, when somebody who has a 6-line profile is considered to have their final role model status, or they step into that final stage of being a role model, they don't want to come off the roof, because it's been so comfortable and warm and cozy up on that roof, and it's so nice not to have to interact with people. But they have to come down just like everybody else, because their role model, their status is to become a role model, to be the embodiment of who they are. And by being who they are, they encourage other people to be who they are. And not only that, because the person with a 6-2 profile carries the 2nd line, there's always going to be some level of talent that somebody with this energy brings to the table. And the 6th line energy, as well as being a hermit, is also about the concept of being alone and sort of needing to have their space and time alone, because this actually gives them the energy to be able to be out in the world. So somebody with a 2nd line energy will always need to have some quiet time, alone time, to recharge their batteries. And after they've recharged their batteries, usually what will happen is they will be called out. The 6-2 energy is somebody who will not be forgotten. When they disappear from the scene, or they're not doing going to the places where they usually go, or they're sort of pulling out of everything, people will notice it, and people will say, hey, where's so-and-so? I don't see them. And they'll be called out to show their talent. And the talent that comes from being a role model is something that just comes naturally. They're just going about their business. They're living their life. They're doing what they want to do. They're feeling their best. And because of that, they're showing other people how to feel their best, other people how to be exactly who they are, and not have to worry about, trying to be or say or do something that is not exactly theirs. There is a lot of optimism with somebody with a 6-line energy, but because of the experimental stage, this optimism can take a few hits, and sometimes people with a 6-2 energy can become pessimistic, and they can see the way humanity is and how that humanity could be so much better, because there's this almost inner knowing about what humanity can do and be. And so if they can sort of shake that off and just get out in the world and just go about their business and do what they're meant to do, they'll have the experience of what they're meant to do, and that's to be a role model for everybody else. And the being energy will be transmitted to everybody around them. And then when they need to take the break, they'll go in and do their hermitage, and then they'll come back out and do it all over again. The 6-2 profile is a left angle profile, which means it's a karmic profile. And it means that everybody that they meet in their lives, even if they're just meeting them for a blink of a second, is somehow receiving karma from somebody with this profile. And it is more of a fated destiny for anybody with a left angle profile as well. And we're talking about the 6-3 profile, the last profile of them all. We also have somebody who is a role model as well as an experimenter. But when we think about the 6th line, comes in 3 different stages. The first stage is from birth until about 28 or 29, or the Saturn return. And this is all about experimenting with life, seeing what works and what doesn't work. And you also have to remember that there's also the 3rd line. So this is someone who is literally experimenting doubly, because for the first 30 or so years of their life, they're experimenting on both lines. So when they get on the second stage of the role model, when they get to the on the roof stage, which is from about 28, 29 to about 51 when they have their Chiron return, there's a lot to integrate. But because of the experimental nature that still remains, because they're a 3rd line no matter what, even when the 6th line becomes the second part and goes into this integration phase, we're still having somebody who's continuing to experiment. And what happens is they go up on the roof and then they experiment with coming off the roof, and then they go back up on the roof and you can experiment with coming off the roof. It can be what is considered a very chaotic energy, but this chaotic energy is really what brings their role model energy to the table, because the role model energy of a 6-3 profile is somebody who's coming and showing people how to experiment with life but keep getting up, and it's how to bang into the walls of life but keep getting back up and keep seeing what the benefit of everything was. Why did this happen? Why was it important for me to learn this? What can I share with the world? And by being this the embodiment of themselves, by being this person who has experimented with life and is showing you how it all works and continues to experiment with life until for their whole lifetime, they are showing people how it can be done. And because of this, they can be wonderful for crisis management. They can bring chaos to order. And they are probably one of the most experienced person with the abundance of knowledge that they've learned from all their experiences. This profile is not a common profile, so there's not many people who have it. It's more rare. All of the role model energy have some level of looking for their soulmate, or the consensus is, or the feeling is, that based on the theory of human design, is that everybody who comes in with a 6th line energy has a soulmate that it comes in at the same time. Whether you believe this or not is not really, if that's not your belief, that's completely fine, but that's what is said. So when you have somebody with a 6-3 profile, you have somebody who is experimenting with relationships as much as they're experimenting with everything else. And so this whole soulmate thing may be more of a longing, but maybe it is more difficult to actually find that, or to make that happen before they go up on the roof, because the energy of a 6th line generally wants to take a soulmate or somebody up with them on the roof. So when they come off the roof, a lot of people after their Chiron return, when they go into their full role model status, can get married, or because if they hadn't had a soulmate to come up with them, or hadn't had a partner to come up with them, or they might get divorced because they realize that the person that they took up on the roof with them wasn't exactly who they wanted to. Somebody with a 6-3 profile will continue to experiment with life, and yes, the experimenting that they do will probably kind of get a little more settled, and maybe it won't be so intense as it was in the first part of their life, but it will always be part of their profile, and it is always going to be who they are. And if a person accepts that this is always going to be part of who you are, and the reason why you're doing all this experimenting is because it is for the greater good of everybody else's, so that what you've learned can be transmitted to other people, so that they can learn from all the experiments and all the things and all the knocks and the things that you've done, so that others don't have to work through the experiments like you did, and they can get the benefits without having to have or do the experiments that you've done for them. So anybody with a 6-3 profile is going to be an abundance of information, abundance of knowledge, and someone who can really tell you the stories of what does work and what you should just steer clear of. The 6-3 profile is another one of the left angle profile, a karmic profile, meaning that everybody that somebody in this with a 6-3 profile meets is somebody that they will give karma to. Again, it could be someone who they meet just for a second. They have this exchange of karma, and it's an energy. It's not something that anybody has to do. It's all about energy exchange, and it's got nothing to do with anything you do or say or anything like that. And it could be a longer interaction where the karma is given as well, but ultimately is a more fated and a more destined life. We've gone through the type, we've gone through the strategy, and we've also gone through the profile. So we've done a lot already. This is going to be the conclusion of part 1. And if you want to go right to part 2, then be my guest. But if you want to take some time, look at your chart, figure out how it interacts with you and how it looks for you, then go ahead. For part 2, we're going to be doing the authority and working through the rest of the chart. And I'll see you in part 2, and we will get right back into it and figure out all about your human design chart. Bye for now.